It was a spectacular goal in extra time that put the result beyond doubt. Newcastle fans brought the house down and club officials erupted in joy. It may as well have been a grand final as celebrations continued into the night.
I've never been more proud of Newcastle. I love the Jets!
Dejected Queensland supporters found it hard to get a word in.
And it was unlucky, I reckon. So, yeah.
So, mate, go home, have a cry. Go you Jets!
Jets coach Gary Van Egmond was in a kissing mood and it was hugs all round for the players. But the final word went to club owner Con Constantine, a hero's welcome for the man who's invested about $15 million in his beloved team.
You know what? It's the people that believe in you. And Newcastle supporters that believe in you with their hearts.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The morning after the night before, but boy, what a night. Players and coaching staff more subdued today, but no less excited. As players recovered, club administrators planned for the week ahead with civic leaders. However, unlike the famous departures of the Newcastle Knights ahead of their successful Rugby League grand finals, the Jets are opting for a more low-key approach this week, with no official farewells or fan days planned.
We had a meeting this morning with all the coaching staff and thought this was the best way to go. And look, Gary's made every decision, a right decision this year, I would have thought, and we certainly adhere to what his opinions are. And
they've got a job to do and they're focused, and we should allow them to do that job the best way we can.
Economically, the club is on a winner. Along with the grand final berth comes qualification for the 2009 Asian Champions League, both expected to increase the club's sponsorship worth. Local businesses are already jumping on board in terms of support. This barber in Hamilton kept busy after promising free haircuts to Jet supporters should they reach the grand final. As for tickets, they were hot property today among those eligible to purchase them. General public sales begin tomorrow afternoon from 1 o'clock. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The sickening attack occurred along this stretch of Hunter Street at 4 o'clock yesterday morning. Kurt Moroney was so badly beaten he had to be put into an induced coma. The 19-year-old had only returned home to Newcastle last week after serving in the Australian Army for 5 months in Malaysia.
In actual fact, I felt angry after I heard about it and was really disappointed that we've still got people in the community that are affected by alcohol and possibly drugs that are carrying on like this.
Police say they're doing what they can to prevent these types of assaults. 20 officers were patrolling the city at the time of the attack. The incident has further fuelled calls for an earlier lockout and closure of the CBD's licensed premises.
And we're proposing now, after this latest round of violence, is in fact a midnight closure of the hotels and a real fair income approach to responsible services of alcohol.
The Lord Mayor says a realistic solution needs to be found in order to stop the violence.
There's really a social issue here, a social problem, and it's really one is at a loss to know how you deal with that. We need specialist advice, I think.
24-year-old Daniel McRae was today remanded in custody by Newcastle local court, charged with occasioning grievous bodily harm with intent. His case has been adjourned to the 27th of February. Madeline Bond, NBN News. While there was no sign of the squatters in their new home today, neighbours say a handful of people moved into the former Hunter shopping village last night. The squatters have abandoned their previous home at the Palais Royal following news Newcastle City Council is expected to approve the final phase of its demolition at a meeting tomorrow night.
Well, it's a concern when you see the problem being transferred, but I'm aware of the fact that the Hunter Shopping Village owners have done a pretty good job in securing the place and keeping it locked up.
But keeping the site secure isn't easy, with several boards and doors already smashed in and clear evidence of people living in the dangerous area. Sadly, according to charity groups, moving from squat to squat is a way of life for many of the city's homeless. They say a more long-term solution needs to be found.
It'd be great if we had a warehouse space where a volunteer organisation like ourselves could manage it, where people could check in at 8 and check in at 8 at night and check out at 8.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A temporary cellar door is open, the tourists and wine connoisseurs are back, and as their slogan reads, the Draytons are continuing the tradition since 1853.
We've been here 150 years and we intend to stay another 150 years, and it was the family's wish that we get up and moving as quick as possible.
There's now a steady stream of visitors, with the new wine tasting and sales area open 7 days a week.
It's a great morale booster to the family and to the staff and to our many loyal customers.
It's been a very difficult time for the winemaking dynasty, and today was one of the hardest yet. It was Trevor's birthday. He would have been 53. As always, Father Max is involved behind the scenes. He and son John are crushing and processing 11 tonnes of Merlot grapes from their own vineyards.
And with a lot of frantic effort, my father Max is now overseeing the processing of some red wines, and this is his 61st vintage, and it's his most difficult, but we're processing some reds on site.
It's a tough ask to take over from his son Trevor in the very same building where he died. And while the room is filled with the rich aroma of fermenting wine and oak, Max says all he can smell now is the smoke that filled the building after the explosion, which claimed 2 lives and left another man in a serious condition. Assistant winemaker Will Rickard Bell is still recovering in Concord Hospital after suffering severe burns in the explosion. A spokesperson for the hospital says his condition is improving. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
At times, it's the toughest job on the field, and over the last decade, the number of people willing to work as referees has dwindled. There's currently about 400 refs available for the upcoming season in New South Wales, and the CRL says it needs at least twice that amount to function properly, or games will have to be cancelled.
It could be getting to the stage where some of the group competitions will have to forfeit some of their games because there's no qualified referees to do it.
Worst affected by the shortage is Group 2 on the Mid-North Coast and Group 19, which centres on Inverell.
I think mainly the drought in country areas has sent a lot of people away from the areas. Crowd behaviour could be another problem, but I know the leagues are cracking down on crowd behaviour, so we're hoping that that'll draw back some of the referees and they're not going to get abused every 5 seconds they're out on the paddock.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Few players forget scoring their first top-grade goal, and what a time for Tarek Elrich to open his A-League account. An extra-time strike securing Newcastle's passage to the A-League Grand Final in a moment to savour. As teammates stacked on, the feeling at home was just as wild.
So I rang home, no one's answering, I'm thinking, what's going on? Then I spoke to my dad and he goes, Mum fainted, and I'm like, that couldn't be good. I'm not scoring anymore.
Most fans would have required oxygen though on a night of high drama. Early chances came and went for both sides. Matt Thompson correcting his aim a second time around. It was a typical do-or-die final. Blood was spilt and players got in each other's faces as bandages were worn like badges of honour. Newcastle had a goal disallowed for offside, and a stroke inside full-time, it really came back to hurt. Queensland awarded a penalty and Reinaldo forced everyone into overtime. For the second successive week, the Jets found themselves in extra time, and what a dramatic final half hour. Another penalty, this time to Newcastle. Joel Griffith slotting home from the spot for a 2-1 lead, before Elrich's sweet strike gave them the all-important buffer. Still, time for more twists. Craig Moore sent off, while Elrich then conceded a penalty, giving Queensland one final shot. It all added to the drama, but after 120 incredible minutes, the finish was duly savoured. The Jets have already created history just by reaching the grand final, but that isn't enough for a side that critics had predicted would struggle to even reach the finals. Even as they soaked up the last of the dramatic win, the focus began to shift.
It doesn't end here. We can't get carried away. And, there's still 1 week to go. We can't take that as the grand final. The grand final's still to come.
There's no doubting how big this week will be for the club, with commitments both on and off the pitch, and Joel Griffiths will be the man in most demand.
You can't really take these weeks for granted. It's going to be a big week. You just got to enjoy it.
Already likened to the region's soccer version of Andrew Johns, it's the sort of comparison that makes him blush, but there's no hiding from the fact he'll be targeted on Sunday.
I wish they focus on me, I really do, because that enables all the other good players in our team to really shine.
And never has so much ridden on a derby match. Well beaten in their previous game by the Mariners, Newcastle consider the Central Coast as their perfect opponent.
A few of their players have been quite vocal as well, so if they want to keep on giving us added incentive, that's fine by us.
Given they've now played successive extra time matches, Newcastle players have tomorrow off before a return to training on Wednesday. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
To have any child going to the Olympics of yours is fantastic, and be able to be there is even unbelievable for us.
It's going to be really good to get my family over there to watch me compete and just to be there to support me.
Milton Orkopoulos had no comment for the media as he arrived at Newcastle District Court. The allegations against him date back to 1995. He's on trial for allegedly having sex or committing indecent acts on young boys and supplying heroin and cannabis to them. The alleged events occurred at several locations across Lake Macquarie, including his Swansea electorate office, and also in Sydney, where he's accused of supplying marijuana to a school student who is visiting State Parliament. Before Judge Ralph Coulihan, the 50-year-old today pleaded guilty to 1 count of supplying cannabis and 1 count of possessing child pornography, which police say they seized from his flat in Redfern. The accused pleaded not guilty to 34 other charges, which include supplying heroin and having sex with boys. Opening Mr Okopoulos' defence, Barrister John Fitzgerald told the court that there was little fact behind the allegations. It'll be up to the jury of 7 women and 5 men to hear the evidence. The trial could run for more than a month, and a long list of witnesses will be called, including federal member for Shortland Jill Hall and former State Newcastle MP Bryce Gaudry. The prosecution is also expected to call to the stand Mr Okopoulos' 3 alleged victims. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
General public tickets went on sale at 1 o'clock, but hundreds of Jets fans arrived early to secure their grand final seat.
So do Mum and Dad know you're here lining up instead of being at school?
My dad doesn't, but my mum does. My sister's in the US at the moment, so they come back on Saturday. So I said, get in line and don't miss out on tickets.
In the end, there were plenty of happy customers. While they're keen to support their team, several fans are far from happy with Football Federation Australia's choice of venue. The biggest concern is the one-day cricket international at the SCG on Sunday, which could cause commuter mayhem. Supporters say the game should have been at the Olympic Stadium, which is also better serviced by public transport.
There's 4 league trials on the night before, then we've got the cricket starting at 2 o'clock, and I think the Football Federation has made a big blur.
Officials deny there will be chaos, with free parking to be provided at nearby Randwick Racecourse, with a shuttle bus running regularly to the SFS. However, it's getting to Sydney, which could pose a bigger problem. Railcorp says it will provide extra services to and from Sydney from midday on Sunday. Police are now discussing the possibility of putting rival fans in separate carriages. Police say extra transit officers will patrol trains on Sunday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Despite the obvious progress being made restoring Fort Scratchley, rumours are circulating that the $9.5 million allocated by the federal government has already been spent and that the project could be further delayed. But the Lord Mayor today dismissed that as nonsense.
I'm assured there's enough money to complete the job.
That's not to say there'll be money left to spare.
When the project is finished, we don't want any money left over because that would then go back to the federal government.
Meanwhile, Council could be just weeks away from approving a development at Merryweather's Surf House, with councillors set to consider a report for the site in April.
We'll be very close to be able to say to a prospective user, we'll accept your proposals.
Council is also a step closer to selecting a development for the Newcastle Museum site, with a report on proposed projects coming to Council in March.
We're moving very quickly to a position where we'll see them developed, and that'll be another adjunct to the amenity and the quality of the city.
And Lands Minister Tony Kelly is expected to make an announcement on Newcastle Bowling Club's future on Thursday. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
They only went back to classes this week, but the stress levels were through the roof for these 44 students today. 2 members of the Beijing Olympic Committee put the communications students through written and oral tests to see who has what it takes to work at the Games.
We are confident, in fact, that they will do their job well.
The university sent a large number of volunteers to the Sydney Games in 2000. That experience and Australia's love of sport, just some of the reasons Newcastle was chosen to participate.
The fact that there's only 10 universities around the world that are supplying volunteers to work with the media is a real terrific honour for us.
The students say they're excited and just a little scared about the prospect of working in China.
I think I could learn so much over there working with the best media from around the world, and it would be a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I'm expecting long hours, not much sleep.
but that's what you've got to do. It's a tough industry.
The 30 successful candidates will be notified by next week. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The growing support for the round ball football code in what's meant to be a league town may still surprise Stu Michalik, but it certainly doesn't upset him. One of the few who can lay claim to being a hometown boy in the Jet squad, he views Sunday's match as a chance to achieve a rich piece of sporting immortality.
Just to be, known as being one of the only local boys in the first team to win the trophy and that for their town would be something very special.
It's something of mixed emotions for James Holland. Raised on the Central Coast, he still commutes from home for Jets training, but he'll be out to end the dream for his region on Sunday. And what a way it would be to cap his debut A-League season, which has already seen him included in Socceroos squads.
It's been fantastic for me. The last few weeks haven't been the best performance-wise, but the team's done awesome and I'm just enjoying the ride at the moment.
He could do worse than follow the lead of Noel Spencer, who knows all about this time of year.
I don't think they'll understand till they actually run out on game day how special it is. So a full house at Sydney Football Stadium is something special. So, it's a good week and we've all got to enjoy it.
After captaining the Mariners to a grand final loss in Season 1, ironically, he has the chance to right that wrong against his old club.
It'll be a little bit strange coming up against him in a grand final, but hopefully this time I can get a winner's medal, not a loser's medal.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
For Betty Anderson, there's nothing sweeter than making lunch for dozens of school children. She's taken on the task at the Junction Public Schools canteen every day for the past 39 years.
Oh, I love it. I think it's beautiful. And I think more people should do it when they get older, because I think they've got something to do then.
Over the decades, thousands of past and present students have viewed her as a surrogate grandmother, and like all good grandchildren, they still never forget to visit.
They come back even when they're 30 years old to give me a cuddle and a kiss.
Her tireless work hasn't gone unnoticed, with artist Suzanne Gallagher capturing her image in a work titled The Volunteer, which is being submitted for this year's prestigious Archibald Prize.
Betty is an absolute legend in the Junction, and I think she's far more important than the Prime Minister even, because Betty's that lady who's in the engine room.
Betty was today overwhelmed with the finished product.
I feel very humble, and I think it's so beautiful, makes me go cold and want to weep.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. The union-led meeting took place in a one-steel car park out of public view. Around 100 of the 220 employees facing the axe vented their frustration.
It was a pretty feisty meeting, and there was a lot of anger from the workers at the fact that they are losing their jobs.
Despite the company announcing its intention to cut jobs and close the Mayfield bar mill on Friday, the Australian Workers Union says the fight is far from over.
The first thing we're asking the company to do is to review their decision. I think if they put some investment into this bar mill, they could remain it open and remain it being profitable.
The union will also call on the federal government to create a new national steel plan to ensure the industry's long-term viability. In the meantime, workers face an uncertain future.
Upset, shattered, got nowhere to go if I don't get a transfer.
The company's payout offer of 4 weeks' wages for every year an employee has worked has been criticised.
They're paying up to 6 years employment, but there's people who've been there for 37 years and they're receiving nothing for the loyalty. So I think it's a pretty poor package, quite truthful.
Yesterday, One Steel posted a half-yearly net profit of more than $104 million. Madeline Bond, NBN News. According to locals, it's just what Nelson Bay's foreshore has always needed, a plan which will see access between the marina and CBD drastically improved, as well as tourism, retail and leisure activities boosted. But just what the plan of management will allow developers to build across the land and even into the water is anybody's guess.
We can't guarantee exactly what they come up with, but this plan of management directs the sorts of things that we want them to look at.
In particular, the state and council want to see more trees planted, public art displays and more moorings for boat users. They also want more security measures following a spate of vandalism attacks over the past 12 months.
Good lighting, etc., so that, and there are video cameras being set up around the town to help our police.
And the foreshore isn't the only area getting a facelift, with the minister handing over $3.2 million to be spent revamping Shoal Bay, Fingal and Halifax caravan parks.
We've certainly already got it spent. There's some fantastic outcomes we're anticipating with this money.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The Hunterview estate at Singleton is brimming with new houses, developments and very few vacant lots. Muswellbrook and Scone also enjoyed growth in the residential building sector last year, as identified in the latest Upper Hunter economic indicators.
Housing demand is high, consumer spending is high, confidence is high.
So is the price of coal, buoyed by overwhelming demand from overseas, which in turn created more positions at Hunter Valley Mines in the last 12 months.
China's going gangbusters and it will continue to go gangbusters, so a lot of employment growth generated by the mining industry.
5,000 new jobs were created across all industries last year, an increase of 20%, bringing the total number of employed to 30,000, with the mining industry the single largest employer. And workers' comfort is a driving theme behind the Mining and Industry Expo, from safety gear to a new type of underground toilet built by a curry firm.
Before this, they just used little buckets and stuff, and some poor bloke had to bring all that out from underground. So these things have revolutionised that.
In contrast, this machine clears the air, while no mining exhibit would be complete without explosives. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Newcastle's history with the round ball code was long and colourful, even well before the famous KB United days. But that's where the likes of homegrown Socceroo Cole Curran flew the local flag on a national scale. A generation of fans fuelled on the efforts of Kenny Bowden. While that infamous own goal moment will live long in football folklore too. Ray Bartz was a founding member of that club, but was forced to watch it and several others like it come and go in the region. Not anymore.
We've sort of been competitive, but we've never been challenging for any honours. And to have a team now that is right back up there at the pinnacle is very satisfying.
A part of that famous Australian squad that qualified for the 1974 World Cup, Bartz was one of the pioneers of the code both locally and internationally, and knows the Jets have the chance to create their own slice of history.
First and foremost is to go out and enjoy the occasion. Secondly is be positive in whatever you do.
That message and the impact a win would have on the region is not being lost on those that count either.
Just walking in the streets the last couple of days, it's been amazing. They all want to congratulate you, wish you luck and all that. So it's not just for the team, it's for the whole city as well.
Speaking from deep inside one of rugby league's strongest regions of Newcastle, David Gallop conceded the NRL is being kept on its toes on all fronts, including the A-League. Watching with interest the groundswell of support not only for the Jets, but the round ball code in general, he's not underestimating the efforts required to keep rugby league top of the pops.
While there will be people who sample both, it's important for a code like us that we capture hearts and minds of people who want to be season ticket holders, live and breathe it every day.
Mindful of the effect the pokey tax is having on leagues clubs, which in turn fund football teams, Gallup remains sure the rank and file support of the NRL remains strong and will continue to be so. Only days out from the A-League Grand Final, he even lobbed a small barb the rival code's way.
But I do believe that rugby league fans are the most passionate of all the codes. There's generations of support there, and they won't be changing their true allegiances too easily.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. You knew from the start that this training session was going to be different. From a laid-back warm-up to a game of dodgeball. The looming grand final couldn't have been further from players' minds. Of course, that was the thinking. However, those behind the egg-throwing competition must have known this was always on the cards. The captain, not the only man egged as teammates became moving targets. Mark Bridge, a marked man too, linked to Sydney FC next year, a last-ditch effort to keep him in Newcastle remains.
It's still an option. Con spoke to me after the game on Sunday and wants to have a meeting this week.
Form defender Andrew Durante does appear destined to be squeezed out next season, but not before he finally gets to play in the season's biggest game.
2001, 2002 with Sydney Olympic we made the grand final, but I didn't play because I was actually suspended. Then the next season we made the grand final again, I was on the bench. And then I moved to Parramatta Power the season after and we made the grand final again, but I was injured with a broken leg.
He'll play a crucial role at the back in a defensive wall that's come under fire from the Mariners since Sunday's final.
You can talk all you want in the papers, but once you come on that field, it's easier said than done, so let them keep on talking.
Tomorrow, the coach will name his squad for the decider.
We've seen a whole lot of change, but I guess most significantly in the last 3 to 4 years with the introduction of low-cost carriers. That's certainly where we've seen Newcastle Airport evolve into the modern airport facility it is today.
And this year, its anniversary year, we'll be seeing the apron. Three weeks into the school year and police say motorists are still doing the wrong thing. This driver was clocked driving 17 kilometres over the school zone limit at 8:30 this morning, just as school children were arriving for class. Perhaps most alarmingly, police believe parents are the main culprits.
We would think that parents who are dropping their children off at school would be the ones who are most aware of the need to have the safety of not only their child but other people's children.
In addition to speeding, they're also continuing to park in restricted areas, shielding motorists' view of any children on the road.
It can be a very dangerous situation and that puts people's children at risk.
And people are still talking on mobile phones whilst driving. Just last week, one parent almost hit a lollipop lady as she was guiding children across the road in Adamstown.
The particular driver at the time was talking on their mobile phone and had to come to a very sudden halt in order to avoid a collision.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. The Newcastle Bowling Club has been a blight on King Edward Park's headlands for far too long, but it won't be there for much longer, with the Minister for Lands today calling for expressions of interest to redevelop the site.
We've moved that one step further now, past the draft plan of management.
Developers have until the 4th of April to submit an application for the landmark site.
The concept would envisage something along the lines of having a conference centre and restaurant there.
And it's not the only dilapidated building getting redeveloped along our coast.
We're working closely with the council, looking at an overarching Crown Reserve along this area to try and develop some of the derelict buildings along the coastal area, particularly places like Surf House.
The Lord Mayor says the club's redevelopment will also benefit King Edward Park by putting pressure on council to landscape a bank between the park's Garside Gardens and the club site.
This will give us the incentive to be able to get more resources in there and have that tidied up, because it will complete that part of the park which has always looked unfinished.
With the state government taking steps to revitalise the city's coastline, private owners of Newcastle's rundown buildings are now being asked to follow suit.
We're working with the owners of those sites and trying to find an outcome, knowing that the situation we have down the West End is really unacceptable.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's held a special place in the hearts of many, but this week Newcastle City Council agreed there was no point hanging on to the remnants of the Palais Royal. It's a decision that's angered the National Heritage Trust.
Generations of people have got fond memories of the Palais, and its historical research shows that people grieve about the loss of their old buildings.
Opened in 1888, the structure's been home to a skating rink, dance hall, nightclub and youth venue, but its afterlife hasn't been so glittering, with the owners allowing it to fall into disrepair. The Trust believes the building's listing on the Newcastle Local Environment Plan should have given it protection.
If they'd retained the facade and the very attractive 1920s foyer and, say, a couple of bays of the building behind, it would have been stable enough to retain.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
It seems ludicrous to compare a striker with a halfback, and Jets gun Joel Griffiths agrees.
My name's not Joel today, it's Joey. It's Joey, apparently.
It follows claims made by his boss, Jets owner Con Constantine, and subsequent reports in print media suggesting Griffiths is the new Andrew Johns.
Plays the game fair, plays the game hard, and I like to think I do the same. But, I think Joey would laugh at that.
In drawing parallels, though, both are leading goal scorers for their clubs, both are go-to men, and both are always marked. However, there is one tag Joel is comfortable with, and that's his teammate to twin brother Adam, who, despite sharing a birthday, really is the big brother.
He's the calming influence, I like to say, and he's been great for me this year. He's always in my ear on the field, just to calm me down a little bit.
He's got to start thinking outside the box and trying to work out how he can beat these defenders as well. So for one thing that he needs to focus on how to do that and to keep a level head.
And the club's very much keeping a level head on the fiscal front too, stopping short of signing major sponsors until after Sunday's grand final.
There's been interest, there has been,
but we'll be pursuing that after this week.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
All right, Con, just a few days before the decider, how are you feeling?
Mate, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I just can't wait till Sunday when the ball is kicked, winning the game and bringing that trophy home.
Did you ever expect success this quickly, though?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. First and foremost, as you know, I'm a businessman. And I always have targets in place. And I knew at the end of the day, guess what? Newcastle was willing and ready to go. And that's what it's all about.
Now, this is a league town. If the Jets win on Sunday, do you think it'll finally put them up there, at least on level pegging, if not the number one team in the region?
Well, it's already done that already. Don't go any further. But having said that, now, I want to see the Jets go to the next level. That's my aim.
Do you think they can be the number one team here?
Absolutely.
How many years? How long do you think? Will Sunday be it, do you think?
I think so.
You've had some critics. What do you say to them today?
I'm in a good mood today. I'm going to let you have it. Guess what? To all my critics, the people that had a go at me during the year, the last 2 or 3 years, in diplomatic terms, I say suck the lemon. To my fans, sponsors and supporters, I say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like Sunday, yourself personally, when they lift that trophy up?
It'll be a big thing for us, mate. I'll probably have tears in my eyes by grabbing the trophy, lifting it up and say, Newcastle, we done it.
Jade North openly admits victory against the Central Coast would be the sweetest of them all. The rivalry between the two clubs is particularly heated at present, given recent sniping, and the Jets captain refuses to back down from his stance that Newcastle plays the better style of football.
Not at all, because I said what I said and I backed it up, didn't I? So let's see if they can back it up.
Part of a Jets defence that was openly questioned by Mariners striker Sasho Petrovski after its win against Queensland, North returned fire.
Those players that had chances can run, so we've got to see if he can step up to the plate.
His coach had to fend off reports of a potential post-match player revolt to the club's owner and then awaiting media.
No, there's no such talk in our training sessions at all.
Keeping cards close to his chest, Van Egmond named an extended 19-man squad for the match, which will be scaled back on game day.
All things being even, it'll be very close to what we had last week.
Some concern today with teenage star James Holland put on ice after a muscle twinge, but it was only precautionary. As for his target man being bullied out of the game...
Joel's big enough and ugly enough to look after himself, mate. He'll be fine.
The team enjoy a day off tomorrow before their last training session on Saturday, with all fans welcome to watch. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Training means so much more when you're winning, and for the Newcastle Surf Club, a stunning return to competition at branch level has given it the impetus to keep going. In the Masters alone, they won the branch point score, and they've never done that before.
A couple of years ago, we didn't really even have a competitive team at all in any age group, and over the past couple of years, they're slowly starting to get back into it, and now it's going really, really well.
They collected 78 medals between them, 10 of them won by Adam Metcalf in what was every bit a prosperous comeback to surf sports after a decade-long break.
Mate, we're having more fun than anything. It's just great. Like, I went in 10 events and I was definitely tired by the end of the day, but I mean, every event was just fun.
He too has resumed training ahead of Newcastle's state campaign at Blacksmiths in 2 weeks. It's been a successful 100th year for the volunteer club so far, backed by a healthy $90,000 sponsorship from Port Waratah over 3 years.
First and foremost, we're looking at our operational life-saving equipment, and then it'll flow through to things like competition equipment, that sort of thing, so that we can enable our members to do more within the surf club.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
The young man, whose identity has been suppressed, was 16 when he met Milton Orkopoulos at a Labor Party function. Shortly after, the Swansea MP invited him on a weekend away in Sydney to attend the ALP National Conference, and the boy was given his parents' blessing. But he told the court that as the pair drove to Sydney together, he was told to remain quiet during several mobile telephone calls because it was important that nobody knew I was there with him. Under questioning from Crown Prosecutor Helen Wilson, the witness told how he was asked to retrieve condoms and cannabis from the glove box of the accused's car and smoked a joint with Orkopoulos on the balcony of his office at State Parliament House. But the most shocking claims relate to a late-night hotel room incident where the young boy says Orkopoulos walked into the room, looked at me and said, "I would love to have you," before lying on the bed and rubbing the boy's chest, sort of just started like around my neck and then down to my nipples. The witness said, "I flinched and I sort of was absolutely scared that he wanted to have sex with me. After that, he just looked at me and said, 'You're not ready for this yet, are you, son?' Then walked out of the room." Orkopoulos is facing 34 child sex and drugs charges. The trial continues tomorrow. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There's no question the Jets have been embraced by their hometown. Edgeworth Public School was today bathed in a sea of Newcastle gold. At Newcastle High, another familiar tune. A token Queensland fan wasn't afraid to show his true colours but he was clearly outnumbered. A special appearance by Jets players Tarek Elrich and Stu Mishalik inspired some copycat hairstyles and made this an assembly to remember. Born and bred in the Hunter, Mishalik can see plenty of similarities between the Jets and the Knights' first grand final experience.
Back in '97 and that, I know we had a day like this at school and that sort of thing, but never thought that soccer or football would be this big.
Mishalik's sister Kate is flying the flag, decking out her workplace, which is also offering discounts for Jets fans. It seems a win on Sunday could change the Hunters' sporting landscape forever.
It's good to see everyone starting to support soccer. I used to play football, but now I'm playing for Magic this year because Jets have made me just get into soccer.
The Knights no longer exist. It's just the Jets.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's going to be a great test of character for our team, and obviously because of the loss we had last time, a bit of revenge for us, and what better way to take it out on a grand final day.
Even in the cardboard company of soon-to-be opponent Felix Sturm, Jamie Pittman keeps his guard. He's southpaw on standby for a quick result, and Mr Business means it.
I'll be knocking him out because that's the only way you can win in Germany is either humiliate him or knock him out.
It's a brief echoed by his Central Coast trainer.
Be sharp, fast, smart.
It sounds simple enough, and while the 26-year-old's unbeaten in 16 pro fights at home, his record abroad isn't so flash, but the disappointment of the Athens Olympics could be blown away on the 5th of April. He's even dropped a weight division for the chance at a Get Square, 4 years in the making.
My goal was to win an Olympic gold medal, and a German robbed me of that, and now I'm going to take it out on Felix Sturm and take his world title belt off him.
If there's any world champion out there today that we'd want to fight, he would be the pick.
There's already a rematch scheduled for the two fighters, yet Pittman says Sturm won't want it. Part of a grand plan towards an all-Aussie blockbuster.
I will eventually go back up to super middleweight, but only to fight our mate Chock.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
It's probably the most important position that I've ever filled in racing administration, and I would say it'll be the most important position that I'd ever aspire to.
After being in lockdown for most of the week, the Jets opened their doors to those who've donned the gold week in, week out. In a bid to keep players down to earth before the big game, the media were banned from speaking to the team, but the fans lapped up the chance to get up close and personal. Around 250 fans lined the fence at Raywat Oval, all with high hopes of a victory over the Central Coast Mariners.
I think it'll be pretty tight, but I think we'll come over the top of them. I think playing the extra game, like not having the week off, is going to help us a bit.
Well, I hope we're going to win.
Jets are the best technical team. I think that'll run over the top of them on the day.
The majority of onlookers only had eyes for one player.
Joel Griffiths.
Jolie!
Coach Gary von Egmond says the support shown today is something players will take into tomorrow's match.
The Newcastle people are really are very loyal, and they come out and support us in their numbers, and it's fantastic.
The team left Newcastle late this afternoon with minimal fuss, the quiet send-off in stark contrast to the grand farewell given to the Mariners as they left Gosford en route to Sydney. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We haven't done a great deal as far as anything physically is concerned. It's really important to freshen them up for this weekend and keep them in good spirits.
Ben Demery and Sean Hopkins have achieved remarkable success during their 3-year partnership. They're ranked number 1 in Australia and 2nd in the world for sprint and time trials. But until this week, there's been a monkey on their back.
Never been able to win our sprint national title, so on the 3rd time we actually got it, so that was quite an achievement.
Relief to finally get that and have that on the mantelpiece. So now we just take a step forward and head towards Beijing now.
Along with the national sprint title, the pair claimed the time trial event by just hundredths of a second. A place on the Paralympic team for the Olympics is now almost a certainty.
We broke the 1K time trial world record last year, so it puts us in good stead, and to win the 2 national titles cements our sport a bit more.
With no competitions between now and the Olympics, the pair will be focusing on their 6-day-a-week training schedule as they nervously wait for the Australian team to be named in June. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.